You are living in your head, and I want to help you do something about that because I don't want that for you. And we know it's having an impact, right? Before I dive into helping you understand how not to live in your head, I want to help you understand what's actually happening, right? Because until you understand that, you're going to continue to be in these cycles of living in your head. So let me ask you something. When was the last time that you were fully present? Like, not body physically in the room, but like actually there. Not planning the next thing while the current thing is happening. Not replaying things in your mind when someone is trying to talk to you. Not mentally writing to-do lists while you're supposed to be present with who's right in front of your face. So when was the last time you were just here? And I'll explain why I asked that question in a minute, but like, if you had to think about that for more than a second, I want you to continue watching this, because I can guarantee you right now that you want to be more present and you want to spend less time in your head and you want to understand what's actually happening. Because the reason I asked that question is that's the result of all this. To be able to be more present, to be able to be where your fucking feet are, to be able to actually switch the noise of this off so that you can be where you need to be. You can be present, be where your feet are, right? So with that objective in mind, a lot of what I see time and time again is that most people, when I ask them to go, okay, well, define what thinking in your head actually means, they will say, oh, it just means to be an overthinker, that I need to just stop thinking too much and I need to think less. They've tried meditation, they've tried journaling, they've tried different exercises, and all of them will work for a little while, but then they find themselves back in their head in the same cycles. Because I hate to break it to you, in the nicest possible way, in the most honest way I can possibly tell you, is thinking less is not the solution. And once I help you understand what's actually happening, once I talk through why it's happening and some of the beliefs that might be keeping you stuck, and give you what to do, it'll all make sense. So the first thing I want to share with you is that your brain has one job and one job only. And that job is to keep you safe. It doesn't actually care about whether you're happy or not. It doesn't really care about your success. It doesn't really care about your presence. It just wants to keep you fucking safe. Its job is to keep you alive. And the best way to keep you safe is by always planning, always staying one step ahead, always focusing on what could go wrong. So you end up monitoring, planning, anticipating, bracing, preparing, just always being on. And to compound this with someone who is driven and ambitious and capable and like wants to reach more of their potential, that monitoring system, that safety system, is not only like really well developed, but it's also been like rewarded because the preparation paid off. The anticipation prevented problems. The planning created results. And when you think about that, right, as a result of all of that, your brain has learned even more that staying on alert keeps you safe. So it never really fully comes off that alertness. So when you close your laptop, or when you sit down to eat, or when you want to spend time with the people that you love, or you want to, I'm looking outside because if you want to enjoy the fucking sunshine without the guilt, you find that that's constantly running, that quiet hum of like always bracing, always on in the background of you trying to live your life. And that's not overthinking. But that's what it means to be actually living in your head, because it's not about your head. It's about how your nervous system, how your body is actually feeling in that moment. And if it doesn't feel safe, you'll never be able to be present. Because what's happening up here is a byproduct of what's happening in here, in our body. And I want to explain that. And I want to explain what's happening in our body when we're living in our head, because once you understand that, everything can change. So when I talk about the nervous system, right, I'm talking about your state, the state in which your nervous system is in, right? And there are two primary states. The first state is activation. So something happens, and we will often call like the activation like fight or flight, right? And this is where your system, your nervous system, becomes alert. It becomes like it becomes alerted, like it's now on high alert. So a threat has been detected, and it's asking you to respond. The second primary state is regulation, right? This is when your system is like, I can be at ease here. I can be present here. I can be calm here. I can just be where I am. And most days, what you'll find is your system will kind of navigate and like fluctuate between both of those states. So something might happen, we activate, then when it's like over, it's past, we regulate, we recover, and we go again, right? So we reset. And when we're thinking about that, right, for someone who's driven, for someone who's ambitious, the threat never really fully resolves. And I just want to hold you there just for a second. So the threat never fully resolves. Okay? So think about what I just said. Two primary states, activation and regulation. Activation is when we've detected a threat. But what's meant to happen is that once that threat passes and it's done, we go back to regulation. But in high performers, it doesn't actually get a chance to resolve, right? And I'm not talking because your life is fucking dangerous or that you're living on the edge or any of those things. Because what's happening is if you are running with a operating system and that operating system is running on the beliefs of like, I have a fear of not being enough, or I have a fear of things falling apart, or I have a fear of losing what I've built, a fear of slowing down or finding out, that without all this doing, like, who the fuck am I, right? None of these fears that are running how you operate actually have a clear resolution. So when you think about that, you can't outrun them. You can't achieve your way past them. You can't plan your way to safety from them. So your nervous system always stays activated. And that's that low grade hum of like being on all the time and never getting an opportunity to actually switch off. And I call that low grade of activation because that's what keeps you in your head. Because the thinking brain, right, the part that analyzes and plans and monitors and prepares, is the tool for managing threat. So as long as the nervous system believes that there is a threat to manage, the thinking brain has to stay online, doing its job, keeping you safe at the cost of allowing you to be present. And I'm pausing there on purpose because I know some of you might be thinking right now, this sounds a bit close to home. Some of you might have resistance. You might be thinking this is a bit therapy. Like, I'm just driven. This is how it's always been. But I'm going to address some beliefs head on because these beliefs are the most expensive beliefs that high performers can carry, and also the beliefs that keep them in this threat, detect, manage state. Belief number one, well, I'm not anxious. I don't have any trauma. I'm just motivated. I'm just driven. And the thing about this is that anxiety and motivation can look identical from the outside. Both create urgency, both drive action, both produce results, but the difference is the fuel source. Motivation moves you towards something. I feel motivated to walk towards this. Anxiety means you're moving away from something, like running away from something. And for most high performers, if they're really honest with themselves, right, they spend a significant amount of time in what they would have called motivation, but it's actually them running from something. Like, I had a client before who openly said to me, I feel like I'm always looking behind as I'm trying to move forward because I have a bigger fear of not losing than I do have of winning. So they're always looking back. And this is what happens when fear becomes the fuel, fear becomes the engine. And it's what a lot of high performers are actually living in right now, right? The second belief is that suffering is the price of success. And this one is probably the most damaging belief in the high performance culture that I just want to completely obliterate, because where it comes from is that you look at people that you admire, the ones who have built something that you would love to build, and the story you hear is always, always, always about sacrifice. It's always about pushing through. It's about the cost of greatness. So you have decided that suffering was proof that you were serious. I know I did for a very long time. And that the result of that is a tight chest. The tighter the chest, the more ambitious I am. The inability to be able to switch off, right? but you tell yourself it's probably because I care. But what that belief is actually doing is it's making the cost invisible. It's turning a signal, a part of what your body is trying to tell you and where something needs to change, into this fucking badge of honor. And as long as you believe that suffering is the price, you'll keep paying it. And you won't question it, and you won't look for another way. But maybe if you do want another way, there might be a fear that crops up, and that's belief number 3, that if I slow down, I'll lose my edge. And this is the fear underneath everything for a high performer, because that peace and performance are opposite, right? That calm and being calm means maybe being complacent. That being present actually means I've really stopped caring. So you stay in your head. Or at least in your head, you feel like you're doing something and you're staying on top of it and you're maintaining that edge, right? But what's actually happening here, right? Every single high performer that I have worked with, they tell me this, that the edge doesn't come from the monitoring. The edge comes from clarity that only became available when the monitoring could stop. So thinking about that, like the best decisions that you've ever made, that's why people will often say, I have my best ideas in the shower, because those moments of genuine insight and creativity and clarity and direction didn't happen when you were in your head. They happened in the shower. They happened on a walk. They happened in the middle of the night when your brain finally stopped fucking trying and forcing and pushing and grinding. That's not an accident. That's what's available when your nervous system actually finally feels safe enough to actually regulate. And that's probably what you've been accidentally blocking, because the thing that I want to make abundantly fucking clear, because it's easy to understand this intellectually and still not feel any urgency in changing it, because living in your actual head is taking things from you. It's taking your presence with yourself, present with the people that matter most, your partner, your family, your friends. They're not getting you. They're getting your body while your mind is somewhere else entirely, planning, worrying, monitoring, managing, and they feel it. They might not say it, but they fucking feel it. And if you don't notice it, it's taking your best thinking. Being always on keeps you in your head, keeps you in this reactive based thinking, managing, responding, solving, not creating, not visioning, not making the kind of decisions that actually move things forward, because your best thinking isn't available when your nervous system is always on high alert. It's only available, like I said, when it finally feels safe to regulate. The third thing it's taken from you is your energy. That monitoring, that always being on, that just fucking always been on alert, it's exhausting. Because of this constant background noise, it's running all the time. And if something needs to run all the time, it's going to take a lot more resources. It's going to drain a lot more of your battery. So that's why people will often come to me and be like, I'm so exhausted. I'm sleeping really well. I'm doing all my right things. But for some reason, I'm still exhausted, because it has nothing to do with how much you have done. It's the cost of a nervous system that never gets a chance to fully recover. And as a result of all that, I've had clients come to me and be like, I just feel like I've lost my joy, lost the passion. I've lost what I used to get so fired up about. And it is costing your enjoyment, because as much as you've built something real, you can't fucking feel it, because there's a part of your brain that registers fulfillment and completion and pride. All of that is offline when you're turned on, when you're switched on, when you're bracing. And it's been replaced by this part that immediately looks for the next threat to manage, the next thing that could go wrong, the next level that needs to be reached before you're allowed to feel good. Now, I'm aware that I have given you a lot of information, but I also want to help you what it actually looks like to come out of your head, right? Because I don't want you to come away from this being like, fucking hell, yeah, and then go back into the same cycles, go back into your head again, because all the techniques you might have tried before have resulted in that same cycle. Because what they've actually been teaching is teaching you to address the symptom. But what actually changes the pattern is changing the nervous system's threat assessment, right? So imagine like your opportunity right now, and what you need to do and what you need to take responsibility for is helping your nervous system understand where we're safe and where we actually need to be protected. So imagine you're being chased by a lion. We want that threat detector system to come on. But in your day-to-day, when you're getting emails, when you're talking to clients, when you're doing things, when you're trying to have your lunch, when you're trying to do things without guilt, we don't really need that to activate because we're safe doing those things. So what we want to do now is we need to create new ways to help our nervous system understand that it's safe to be regulated, it's safe to be in that state. That slowing down doesn't mean you're going to fall behind, that being present doesn't mean you're going to lose your edge, that the thing that you've been monitoring for, the fear of not being enough, or all those fears that I mentioned, isn't actually a threat. And that takes something completely different than any of the tactics or the structures or the meditations that you've tried. It takes reps. Right? Moments where you choose regulation over activation, because it is very easy for you to stay in activation. Right? That decision that you made from a regulated state was better than the one that you made in your head. That's what that looks like to make that choice. That conversation that you had when you were actually present, noticing that it landed differently than the ones where you were fucking half on and half away. The work that you produced when your nervous system was calm and centered had a quality about it that you haven't felt for a while. That's how your nervous system learns. Not through learning and listening, through actual fucking reps and showcasing that we can do this and this still happens. We can do this and we get this result. So that's the whole part, right? So there's a couple of steps to this, but like you need to take responsibility to give your nervous system new experiences to show it that we're safe when we do X, Y, and Z. We're safe when we use this fuel source. So instead of always being driven by fear, if you want to be driven by excitement and enjoyment and flow again, then we need to help your nervous system understand that that's not unsafe, right? So the first thing that I want you to do is notice when you're in your head. You'll know it, right? The most important thing from there is when you notice that you're in your head, I want you to eliminate judgment. If you have any judgment for being in your head, for feeling the way that you do, you're again keeping yourself in a threat cycle. And you're part of the problem now, right? You're part of that loop, continuing to stay looped because you have judgment and shame, right? So what I want you to do is get curious instead. So instead of the judgment, get curious of like, why does this keep coming up for me, right? Why am I in my head? Just want to get curious. And the second thing that I want you to do is to drop into your body. So the quickest way of doing it, right, is to do a body scan. So if you notice that you're in your head, and I see now when my head gets like loud and it's noisy and it feels like it's like ping ponging back and forth of a million different things and I can't seem to settle on anything, I see that as a cue. Instead of trying to ask these questions, I'm going to now come into my body. So when I drop into my body, so a noisy head is my cue to drop into my body. And when I do, the first thing I'll do is I'll sit down in my chair, I'll take a couple of deep breaths in through my nose and out through my mouth, and then I'll start to do a body scan. So I'll start in my head and I'll be like, okay, my head is feeling a bit fuzzy. I'll come into like where any tension or tightness is within the body. And then first thing I'll do is I'll acknowledge it. Second thing that I'll do is understand that my body is trying to tell me something. So I want to figure out what is the biggest source of tension right now in my body. So for me right now today, actually, it's just here on my shoulder blade. So what I want to do is actually bring connection to that and be like, okay, if I'm to acknowledge this part of my body that's feeling the most tension, and now I have to give it an opportunity to speak, I'm here to listen to what's actually happening. And whatever answer comes up, I want you to write it down, because that's how you start listening. Your body has been trying to communicate with you and to help you become regulated, right? But you haven't been listening. So when you do that as a like repeated practice to start off with, you start opening up the communication pathways between you and your body. Yeah, so that now you can do something with it. And then when you add more regulation into your day, like on purpose, deliberately, right? Not because you're finished work, as a non-negotiable for how you operate, right? 10 minutes to yourself, with yourself. No phone, no distractions, no input, no output, just you. You're not there to relax, you're there to regulate. Taking those 10 minutes regulation is an active process, right? You're giving your nervous system time to fucking breathe and be, and you're checking in with yourself. And every time you do that and nothing falls apart, your nervous system updates to say, we're safe here, right? And here's what's happening as a result of this. When you start to maybe notice all those things, you'll then notice, I'm not in my head as much. The more regulated I am, the less I'm in my head. The more I connect with my body, the more I connect with myself. The more I connect with myself, the more regulated I can feel. So in those systems, if you were to set up a repeated practice of taking those 10 minutes at the start of the day, at the end of the day, the change can be phenomenal, and the change can be like rapid, right? But I want to end this in a way because I want you to know what's actually available on the other side of this. And I'm not promising you anything, but as someone who has done this herself, but also watched so many other people do this, when someone starts to regulate their nervous system, like really fucking regulate it, the first thing that changes is the quality of their thinking. Decisions will get clearer, right? Because they now have a space with themselves where there isn't as much noise, where I can actually hear what I need to. And then because I can hear it, I know the answers. The second thing that changes is their relationships. People around them will feel it, right? They'll be more present, they'll be more there, they're just different, they'll communicate differently. They're less on edge. The third thing that will change is the results, right? Working from a completely different state, calm, centered, confident, right? That decisive action will ultimately produce outcomes that aren't frantic and fearful or reactive, right? And the one that surprises people the most is that when they start to feel something they haven't in a long time, they'll start to feel pride. They'll end their day and they'll be like grateful because they were fucking there, they were present for it, right? And my reminder to you is that you don't need to keep living in your head, right? It's not who you are. And what's happening is it's your nervous system trying to keep you safe with the information that it has. Your job to come off this training right now is to go and give it a new experience, to go and help it regulate, to go and help it come away from the state of dysregulation, the state of activation, and come back into giving it a new opportunity. Start with that, right? And then safety becomes available. And then change starts to happen.